Welcome to Massive Signals, where we explore the companies defining the next wave of deep tech and the inflection points that took them from lab to market. I'm David Mandel, joined by my co-founder Ari Newman. Each episode, we go deep with founders, investors, and researchers driving breakthroughs in energy, quantum, AI, defense, and the new space economy. This is Massive Signals. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Massive Signals, where we dive deep into the key inflection points that help deep technical companies evolve over time. Today, we are super lucky to be joined by Andrew Antonio, the founder and CEO of Urban Sky. Urban Sky is pioneering humanity's routine and easy access to the stratosphere and the value locked within it using very cool balloons. Ari and I have known Andrew for quite a while, so we're really looking forward to this conversation and learning a lot more about Andrew and the company. So let's dive in real quick and easy. Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself, catch us up on who you are, or how you got to the point of starting Urban Sky, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, first of all, guys, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Big fan of your team. So thanks for everything you do for the community here in Colorado and nationally. But yeah, glad to be here. So my background in the stratosphere is really interesting and different and niche. So my co-founder and I, some of you may remember the Red Bull guy that jumped from the edge of space a long time ago. My co-founder and I actually worked on the project that broke that record. My co-founder, Jared, actually led the spacesuit team for a project called StratX. This was over 12 years ago that we did this, so pretty early in our careers. But we built a spacesuit for, at the time, was this guy, Alan Eustace, who is the chief of knowledge at Google. Very interesting title. But he went 136,000 feet under a balloon the size of a skyscraper to the edge of space and skydived back down to Earth and still holds the world record for the highest balloon flight ever. So that's how we got our start in stratospheric ballooning. And we've been focused on creating value in the stratosphere ever since we had that initial exposure.
Cool. And what is it about the stratosphere that like has you so obsessed? And, and what was the key spark that got you guys to decide, shit, we really need to do this?
To me, the stratosphere is really, truly the one of the few remaining final frontiers. Like if you look at space and low Earth orbit, even deep space, there's been an enormous amount of investment in infrastructure, money pouring into venture. Similarly, in commercial aviation, obviously that's a massive industry. In deep sea exploration, large industry. You know, it isn't a large industry, the stratosphere. It's sort of been this ignored layer of Earth's atmosphere that sits between commercial aviation and space. And so we believe at one point in the not too distant future, the stratosphere will be as large as space and the industry that has evolved within that domain. And we're really the primary company that's pioneering all the technology and value needed to finally unlock that frontier.
Why do you think it's been so overlooked? Like usually segments that are overlooked for a reason. Either the ROI isn't there or people have tried and failed. So like, what's your take on that?
Yeah. So number one, balloons aren't sexy, right? So the way you access the stratosphere is using balloons. And that technology stack in particular has been really sort of archaic and dormant and not well developed over the last 60 or 70 years. If you actually look at the history of the stratosphere, there has been enormous value to the world. It really was the earliest form of space exploration. The Air Force used stratospheric ballooning before we eventually went into low Earth orbit and space. And then it kind of got forgotten. To be clear, there's a lot of people that still care a lot about it within that span of time. But there were not companies developing, trying to unlock new technology stacks that would actually, and we can get into the weeds, but really unlock some of the first principal problems in the stratosphere. And so what Urban Sky is doing is tackling those first principal problems that no one else has tackled over the last 60 to 70 years.
Let's go a little deeper into that, because when we first met you, right when you were thinking of starting the company, like you were kind of just playing with balloons.
Yeah.
Right. What were one or two of those kind of first principal problems that you took on first? And like, what was the key unlock that got you to realize like, oh shit, there's actually like a real business here if we can get this working?
I would say there's three big ones. Number one, balloons were, extremely expensive and one-time use, right? So we took the exact SpaceX mentality to the stratosphere and said, we must build durable, reusable systems. Everything that goes to the stratosphere has to get flown again. And before Urban Sky, that was not true. We're now the first company in history that has flown reusable systems, reusable balloons to the stratosphere multiple times. So we had to fix the sort of core unit economics of, again, it's the whole analogy, don't fly a plane from LA to New York and throw it away. Nobody tried to solve that problem. So we've solved that problem. That's already solved. Number two is system miniaturization. So we believed, all the traditional balloon systems, stratospheric systems before urban sky were multi-100-pound payloads using old, misengineered sensor systems that were big, heavy, power hungry. We made a bet at the time. We were too early when we founded the company that system sensors would be miniaturized and we'd be able to build smaller cameras, communications equipment. Now that has been proven obviously correct, right? That things have gotten smaller and more efficient. So we made a bet on miniaturization and we swam to the puck and that worked. And then the third first principle problem, this is the one we're still working on. This is a very hard one, is the way you navigate or steer a balloon is by moving it up and down to grab different wind layers. So it can go in different directions, kind of like a sailboat sailing on different wind currents, right? There is not enough data in the stratosphere to have very precise understandings or an understanding of where those wind currents are moving. Yes, we have some data, but right now we're sort of missing this massive proliferation of weather information that will produce a good, what I would call stratospheric GPS system. So now we're really focused on, for the stratosphere to proliferate, we need more and better data captured in that environment to know where our balloons are going to go and understand how to steer them.
Sounds like another business opportunity.
It may or may not be.
I remember when I first met you and got my head around the company, the navigation part was like just blew my mind. I was like, how do you steer the balloon? Altitude. I like it. Just okay. Good luck.
Yeah, and to be fair, like today, it's quite crude. It's not like steering a drone or an aircraft, right? It's like not as precise. But all we're missing is data to make it precise. So this is a solvable problem, and we know how to solve it.
Let's talk a little bit about the specifics about how you're currently doing, because I think for a lot of listeners, viewers right now, like they think balloons, they think these big structures that get launched from a crane and they go across the country, and like you do it very differently, right? So like, give us a little imagery and description of how you actually deploy data. So like if I'm a user and I want data, I was like, hey, this is what I want. Like, what's the use case in the process? Walk us through.
Yeah. So think of our systems like a satellite in a backpack. That's the shortest way to say it. So we've engineered everything to be single person deployable in less than 10 minutes from anywhere you can get a truck or a small boat. So it's another, back to first principles, probably a smaller one, but we really focused on tactical deployability of balloons because we were faced with the challenge of balloon steering, guidance, and accuracy. The simplest way to solve that is launch them from anywhere, right? Not from fixed infrastructure or big airports like traditionally was done with every company before us. So we put stratospheric balloons and sensors in a backpack. Our engineering philosophy within the company is everything has to be so simple, guys, that I could teach you in less than one day how to operate one of these systems. So that becomes scalable. So our entire engineering team is focused on no more than one button. If there's more than one button on the payload or the system that's going to the stratosphere, you failed. And so we really, our design philosophy is around simplicity, and our deployment philosophy is around speed and tactical capability.
When you were getting started, what were the sort of the first kernels of insight or of customer requirements that set you off in this direction? Like at the end of the day, you're collecting data for customers, you're using just sensors, cameras. The customers need observability over a piece of land somewhere, right? There was probably a lot of different ways to solve this. What was going on like 4 or 5 years ago with the customer conversations and sort of how the foundation of the company got built around, I need this data, here's how much I want to pay for it, how can you solve this problem for me, that got you to going in this direction and scaling from there?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to bring up that, we were initially wrong with our market thesis. So we spent several years trying to build a business and use our camera systems that we had developed to capture high resolution aerial imagery. We spent years working on this. So what are those markets, right? The insurance market, the industrial market, oil and gas markets for monitoring oil fields, right? So we spent a lot of time trying to sell our high resolution balloon captured imagery into those spaces. And we kind of got our butts kicked, to be honest. That, it's a fairly developed market. There are satellite companies, there are aircraft companies, there are drone companies. And yes, we have unique value. But I think what we learned really quickly there was if you don't have a 10x better product, you have all these other obstacles that you have to deal with, right? Long-standing contracts, recurring contracts on 5-year time horizons with satellite companies, relationships.
Yeah.
And you can't win with a 2x better product. So after years of trying to make that work, I wouldn't say it's a pivot because we still do a little bit of that, but we expanded the breadth of what we're doing. And we really found our niche and our focus in the defense sector pretty quickly. So on the path of trying to sell high resolution imagery into these markets, we realized we had invented an entirely new category of aircraft. What I just described to you as a personally deployable satellite. And that was something that was totally new to the world and 10x better than anybody had in that category. So now the majority of our business is serving defense and intelligence customers with hardware and software, not necessarily data. We're not selling them imagery. In fact, we don't at all. We sell them systems that, like you'd sell a drone, and they go off and operate those systems with their own payloads and for their own use cases.
That's pretty cool. So, I'm going to dig a little deeper on that because that's really interesting. Because that is not an uncommon thing for a lot of startups, right? They have a very cool technology solution. They think they know where they're going, right? They spend a year or two, sometimes even more, banging their heads against the wall, trying to push against that market. And then there's an unlock and they realize, oh, wait, that's not actually the right market. So talk a little bit more about, like you said, we got our butts kicked. Like, what did that actually look like? What was the conversation and timeline process with you and Jared around, shit, we're doing this wrong? Like, we've got to walk us through a little more detail there, because that's stuff that's really helpful for other founders.
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, first of all, my co-founder and I, Jared, we have an incredible relationship. We view our foundership as like a marriage. We talk about it like that we're married just the same way I'm married to my wife, and we're going to disagree and commit a lot of times to each other. So I think that relationship has always anchored and been the foundation of our company and why we've been had the success that we've had. But tactically, the reason we finally stopped investing energy in that space is it felt like heroism every time. And if you're going home at night and feel like I have to do heroic things to make this work from a market perspective, right? I'm like begging someone to give me a $20,000 deal, and then it's going to take us a month to fulfill that. And like, how does this scale? That's the inflection point where you say, this isn't worth it anymore. And then conversely, around the same time, we had defense users show up where the complete opposite was true. It felt too easy to sell the product and to hit the kind of inflection points we wanted to hit. And that was just sort of an honest conversation between Jared and I of, you have to swim in the direction of the current. And that's what we started doing.
I actually remember that moment because we came and did a site visit right when you were getting your first defense contracts, and you were like dumbfounded. They're giving us all this money and all they want us to do is XYZ. It can't be like this, right? I sort of remember that turn for you. That's like incredible to understand how that evolution happened. And, one of the patterns that we see in deep tech over and over again, it was hard science-based companies, is there's a lot of false summits as you build the business. And there's also a lot of money that comes from corporates and potential customers that are happy to pay for experimentation and learning. Right. And we've seen it in a lot of different industries. Oh, here's a bunch of money. Here's money for a pilot. Here's a non-binding LOI. If this stuff works, we're probably going to do more of it. And only after do the startups realize the customer was never really committed to a long-term production relationship. They just want to learn alongside you and they're willing to spend some money on it. Did you guys experience that also?
I would say most of our early deals in the non-defense space were exactly what you just described. And it's hard to know if, signal through noise on those things because you want to believe in yourself. Like, right. I think there's this fine line between optimism and insanity. And when you have customers giving you some money and really believing in your your project, that's self-validating. So there is no easy silver bullet on like how to make sense out of all that. But yeah, we definitely were subject to that. And it's a complicated situation.
It's a big trap for investors too, because if you're like a pre-seed or seed investor and the company gets a bunch of contracts and you're like, hey, we're going to go from 100,000 to $1 million in revenue. Everyone's like, let's go, let's do the next round. Let's, big Series A, only to find out that none of that, like all of that revenue was ephemeral. And you always know what happens, right, David? The next board meeting, the CEO comes and says, we're totally pivoting. We're going to be a different business in 6 weeks. And that's like 6 months after you wrote the check.
Yeah. But so let's talk about that call, right? So when you realize where your real market was, had to make that pivot. I'm sure there were a lot of hard conversations at the board level. Maybe there were good conversations, but maybe they were really hard. And from an organizational perspective, did you have to make a lot of organizational changes? Did you have to make a lot of hard decisions? Or was it easy to just refocus the existing team and infrastructure?
The short answer is it actually was smoother than maybe even most founders would have to deal with. Number one, we found it very early on. So I think we were really careful not to scale this company until we had product market fit. So I think we found this out with 12 employees. So moving the company in a different direction was like, we still had the best people in the seats from an engineering perspective. I was at the time the only business employee. So it wasn't like we needed to get rid of a sales team and find a new one. So I think we were deliberate. And I think that is, not all founders think that way, but I think I believe in sound financial discipline and scaling at the right time. And so we didn't want to scale the company until we really felt like we found our fit.
So what do you think one of the keys around making that switch was for a defense or military customer? Was it speeds of deployment? Was it resolution? Was it controllability? Like what were you guys providing that they're like, oh my God, we can't get this anywhere else? Like what was the key unlock from your business from a value prop perspective?
Yeah, again, related to the Stratosphere, there are quite a few for defense, but again, the short version is satellite in a backpack. That did not exist, period, end. So just that term was totally new to that customer base. But why does satellite in a backpack matter? Well, you can sort of think through that of like, you've got a soldier or special forces operator in the field that's in the middle of a valley and does not have access to a line of sight communication system. How do they solve that problem? They launched this balloon in their backpack up, and now they have a retrans system for their own personal comms network in a secure environment within 30 minutes, right? So that's just one use case. So the real value prop is in what the Stratosphere provides in that rapid deployability element. One of the other key ones I think that worked really early, y'all probably remember the Chinese balloon that flew over the United States. And
oh yeah,
right. United States shot it down with a missile. Most people don't know this, but they actually shot at it twice. The first missile missed. So they spent almost $1 million trying to take that Chinese balloon out of the sky. For that balloon, that made sense. Our balloons are not as big or as expensive as the Chinese balloon. So for our Department of Defense customers, there's an economic asymmetry to this capability, meaning the price to put it up is significantly less than the price to combat it or bring it out of the sky. And that really resonated early.
Well, and from a tactical standpoint, the small, like those weapon systems are not designed to go after such a small target. And so the targeting is the issue, right?
100%. There are no purpose-built defense systems to combat.
Right. Maybe Anduril is working on a nano missile for this thing.
But that would be pretty cool. I assume there will be something in the future.
Right. I've clearly watched too many.
I'm sure drone technology is changing that. But
I'm sure I've watched too many sci-fi movies. So,
or laser systems from the government, right? Just
right.
Government in El Paso.
Could be yes, literally yesterday, right? Yeah.
I'm going to come back to when we came and did our site visit with you a long time ago. You're 3D printing mounts, you're 3D printing every component that doesn't exist. You already were thinking about things from a system standpoint, but you were also rapidly iterating. Coming like digging into the shift, right? You found product market fit. You figured out how you wanted to go to market with the product by delivering it a certain way to a certain set of customers. What's going on inside of the building today? Does it feel like you're still iterating and experimenting? Does it feel more like a factory floor where you're rolling product off the line? We'd love to understand that.
Yeah, I think we've definitely evolved. So it is super important to us to maintain that iterative culture and this fast moving pace that we have. I think I always talk to our team about one of our advantages, like probably our most important advantage, is our people and our pace. It's not the technology that we're building. Like our cycle times, our ability to rapidly innovate is what our customers love about us the most. So we've sort of split the company functionally into two, right? Where like we have a process now where a system reaches a level of maturity and gets handed off to production, high quality manufacturing, but we maintain spiral development engineering philosophy within that hardware group. And we're super adamant that that needs to stay in that space. So we launch, we are literally launch, fail, fix on the engineering side. We fly somewhere between 5 to 10 R&D balloons per week testing new systems. So our entire culture is around iterative and spiral development. But now, because of our defense contracts, yes, you have to hand off to an AS 9100, approved manufacturing facility and have all the right structures in place for that.
Right. When you sell to a customer like that, they need 20 or 100 units that are like for like.
Assurance. They need quality, right? Yeah.
Just for context setting, right? Like you guys raised your Series B, I guess, 6 to 8 months ago or so, right? Is that about right?
About a year ago. Yeah.
About a year ago. And so you guys are still all in on the government, good government contracts, making really good progress there. Where do you see the future of evolution for this business? Are you staying with this customer? Do you see, we've heard, you've talked a little bit about global constellations of stratospheric balloons, right? Give us a little view around like where you see Urban Sky going, and what do you think both the big gaps and the big inflection points you need to overcome to kind of get to that future vision?
Yeah, so I would say without revealing some of our strategy and roadmap, the highest level way I can answer that is, through our mission statement, which is to provide routine and easy access to the stratosphere and the value locked within it. So that is our guiding philosophy for product development. What does that mean to me at a high level? Again, back to the beginning of our conversation, that I truly believe the stratosphere will be as large as space in our lifetimes. You will see that within the next 2 decades. To me, that means, 3, maybe 4 or 5 companies are going to evolve that find very large markets with product categories within that airspace domain. We will be one of those companies. That is a certainty to me. We have to maintain that and work towards that. We have a head start in the world to do that. You talked a little bit about global constellation, so I'll peel back the cover a little bit. So we do see future constellations of stratospheric balloons all over the world, the same way that you guys don't think about satellites flying over your heads today, right? It's got sort of an afterthought. We expect there to be thousands of those systems in the stratosphere.
So how does that work, right? So a LEO or GEO satellite is essentially in orbit. It's either sync or async. It's station keeping, essentially. You inherently are putting up a balloon that travels on the wind and goes from A to B. Is that a continuous launch cycle to maintain the constellation?
The short answer is no. There are balloon types. There are certain types of balloons that can fly for 6 months to over a year. NASA has already done this. Balloons have flown for over a year continuously. So the way you can think about it is you would effectively launch a fleet every year. And there's a term that's used in space called proliferated LEO, right? So this idea of CubeSats and small sats, there's thousands of them up there. Same thing in the stratosphere, right? So we can buy down some of the risk of wind uncertainty or variability on navigation by launching 5,000 balloons, where now you basically have smaller systems everywhere at any time that can reach to certain areas within minutes.
And you're basically going to jibe and tack up and down across an area based on wind.
You got it.
That is so cool. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I got it.
Maybe we can see balloon racing as a new sport.
Yeah. And people think it's crazy, right? I think people look at us like, sounds like that's not going to exist. It's like, again, NASA has already done, we're not proving the impossible. We're just miniaturizing it and scaling it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the moment where you really felt the shift happening, the J curve or the inflection point of experimentation to that product market fit to like, okay, we just need to do more of everything faster?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think we sort of responsibly scale based on market demand. So I don't think we've sprinted too fast in any direction and taken too much risk. Some of the inflection points we felt were like, number one, like selling our first balloon to the United States Army was a really big deal. Actually having somebody buying your product without you and then selling dozens of them and a follow-up order was a really big deal. And so when we started to see this evidence and these signals, that's when we did our Series B. You talked about that last year. It's like we really started to see an inflection point and a curve that was nonlinear on the uptake of our systems and our software. And that's where we started to lean in a bit more.
Right. So you guys didn't have that moment where it was like, well, the orders were coming in single digits and now we have to produce 10,000 or something like that.
We have not tens of thousands, but we've had moments like that. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Without talking too much about Urban Sky specifics, right? We talked a little bit about the kind of, oh shit moment. We're doing the wrong thing. We have the wrong market. You figured that out. Talk to us about some of the key learnings for you personally as a founder and CEO, like as you've tried to scale this business. Like, what are some of the really difficult situations or decisions? Like, what were some of the things like, oh my God, I really had no idea this is how this works. But now I figured it out.
Try to answer it a few ways. I already touched on this, but I think one of the most important things, especially if other founders are listening, is I'll go back to the relationship with your co-founder. Maybe you don't have one, but like I think through all of the adversity, and we've faced a ton of adversity as a company, the thing that has always guided us and helped us the most has been our relationship and our ability to vehemently disagree with each other over fundamental vision-related items, strategy-related items, and still move forward together and support one another. And so it's kind of like that mentality of like, I don't care if you cheat on me, we're not getting divorced. We're going to figure out how to make this work as a couple, right? And so I think that has always guided us better than anything. And that would be the one thing I would want to pass on to people is develop.
That's really important though. Like, I don't know if that's the best analogy you use, but I think that's really important, right? Like we see a lot of company failures, and probably some of the most company failures are driven by co-founder misalignment, right? And people, I think, often misconstrue the concept of the ability to vehemently disagree with your co-founder, yet still show up aligned in front of the organization, right? And I think it's that part of the process that a lot of co-founders miss. And when you miss that conversation, like, it's okay for us to go into a dark room and scream at each other, but when we come out of that room, like, we have to be completely aligned, right? And like, how long did it take? Was that just a given for you guys up front? Did you have like, did you have a bad experience where you realize like, oh shit, like we can't do that. That's not okay. Or was it an open conversation, or did it just happen?
I would say it took years to develop, but like I have to give all the credit to the founders of our last company. So before Urban Sky, Jared, my co-founder, and I were at a different business. We were two of the earliest employees. We became very close to those founders. Their names are Jane Pointer and Tabor McCallum. They're famously in Biosphere 2, this self-enclosed ecosystem in the Arizona desert. They're space entrepreneurs. We left to start this company, and they took us out to dinner, and they said that they're actually married. So number one, they're a married couple. Now that's atypical, but they took us out to dinner and said what I just said, which is the only piece of advice we can give you is treat your relationship the same way you would treat any other problem that you're dealing with in the company, and give it that space and give it that light touch. And we didn't get it at the time, and it took us years to figure it out, but we never backed off of trying to make that work.
Good for you. That's not an easy thing to learn. And I'm glad you had that advice. Like, both Ari and I have been in situations where that was not the case in the organization. We've seen it kind of rip companies and people apart. And, we're very lucky right now that we've had the experience. And, as a co-founding team, we feel the same way. But that's a hard lesson to learn, but a very incredibly important lesson to learn.
I want to dig in a little more to your Series B, and obviously, share what you're comfortable sharing. But getting a Series B in deep tech done is not easy. Getting a Series B done in deep tech for a first of its kind, novel approach to a large scale problem where there's multiple layers of competitors trying to sell the same kinds of data to similar customers must have been also very difficult. And, the venture industry is deeply cynical. Everyone loves first mover advantage and first of its kind until they don't. So what was that journey like for you? And ultimately, what do you think was the single largest insight or unlock that got your Series B investors to get to conviction and issue you a term sheet?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, I would just say counterintuitively, actually, our Series B was not a major obstacle or challenge. Our Series A took me almost 10 months to raise. I think our Series B took about 2 months from the time we decided we were going to go do this to actually raise the capital. So it was truncated and actually quite efficient. And I think the reason is because the evidence was there. Number one, that we are the first mover in this category creating space. We had revenue-based evidence to show the inflection point and the nonlinear curve on revenue, and that this was happening. And then I think most importantly, we found the right fit. I think we had Altos led our Series B. I don't know if you're familiar with that fund there.
Yep.
Yeah. And they believe in really, I would say two things. They might disagree on this. I'm speaking for them. But number one, a hedgehog mentality of like, can we find founders that no matter what happens, they're just going to persevere and continue to fight and get through anything that comes at them and not give up. And I think they saw that in Jared and I. They saw we generally don't go out in the world, do interviews, all this stuff. We just want to build our product, right? Like that's generally all we really want to focus on. And number two, they believe in category creation. So that was an obvious checkbox when they looked at Urban Sky and the traction we had going into that fundraise. So I think if we hadn't found that fund, this would have actually taken a lot longer to get conviction in this type of space. But we got married with the right investor at the right time.
Did you have a relationship or start a relationship with Altos prior, or this was just part of your outreach on Series B?
No, I did not. Yeah, I was introduced via other investors that had relationships with them. So I think that was, helpful. But yeah, it went very quickly from dating to marriage in that span of time.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And, for your company, the Series A was the bigger lift because that was the moment where the revenue picture and the trajectory weren't clear. Series B was more of like, it's working. We have the pull. Let's just scale what we're doing.
Correct. Yeah. Series A was me trying to sell an imagery business to investors without the evidence to back it up. And that is really what catalyzed a lot of the change. Yeah.
I think for
pre-shift to the government side.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of deep tech companies, obviously different domains are different, but so many companies are still like they get through the Series A and often at a pretty high valuation and they're still in the experimentation and pilot phase and they haven't figured it out yet. And that's why the Series B is often big lift because, it's sort of the equivalent of the A in other more traditional industries. So that's great. And we're thrilled that you've found the perfect investor that, has that long-term lens and really believes in you guys. So what's next?
What's next? Well, we're heads down, focused on building a new suite of products. So I'll peel back the cover a little bit on sort of our vision, but we're building a family of balloon systems, right? We sort of started with one core product, and that's sort of the primary flight vehicle and software stack that our defense customers use. Now that we've had a lot of uptake on that system, we're looking at what other defense-related missions are we not capturing, and how do we build systems, products, balloon types that fit those other needs? Similar to the aircraft industry, right? It's not one balloon fits all. You have different shapes and sizes of vehicles and platforms. And so we're beginning to invest heavier and do a lot of experimental R&D on new platforms, new types of balloon systems that we think are going to be useful to our defense customers, while in parallel, it's going to sound like a full circle moment, but we're still, maybe hedgehog is the right word. We're not willing to give up on the imagery market and that entire remote sensing space on the commercial front, so non-defense. So we are building systems. We're just looking at a different problem. We're not looking at selling imagery anymore. We're looking at developing unique data products that are unlocked from the stratosphere that satellites and aircraft and drone cannot sell. I can't say much more than that yet, but there will be new types of intelligence that you can derive from the stratosphere that no other platform can. and those will serve commercial users in different types of industries.
Yeah, you got to forgive me here, but I keep getting the imagery where you get a new customer coming in and they're talking about your solutions, and it's like the Thanksgiving Day parade, right? Where you see like, here's Snoopy floating by, and then Garfield, and then Santa. Like, which balloon do you want?
Exactly right. Yep, we line them up. You come in the warehouse, we'll show you all of them. Yeah.
Right. Sorry for that horrible imagery.
We're gonna just let that one go, David.
Yeah. I couldn't let it go.
Earlier, we each get one in. Now you got to get one in.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense, right? So you've got a strategic advantage, which is you understand the stratosphere. You've got the right dialogue going with your customers around their requirements and needs. And now you've found that you can take advantage of a domain that you have unique mastery over that others don't. And so that's sort of a classic, blue or gray ocean opportunity where if you move quickly there, you can deliver value that nobody else can. So that's super cool. And like how, what happens in 3 to 5 years for Urban Sky? Like, where do you think this company ultimately can go?
Yeah, short version is we want to be the SpaceX of the stratosphere. We will be the SpaceX of the stratosphere. So I think the analogy was good until a few weeks ago. Now that they bought XAI, they're doing
yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't really work anymore. But like initially, our company, just what you said, we started building platforms, solving first principles unit economics problems. Once we've established the best platforms, meaning balloons that get us access to the stratosphere, just like SpaceX has built Starlink, we will begin to build businesses that look like that. How do we leverage our own platform? Sure, we'll sell it to others. We'll let other people get access to the stratosphere too. Everyone can have that access, but we will use that access ourselves to build our own data and intelligence businesses within the stratosphere.
And are there key like macro signals that you're waiting for to enable that, or is this just a question of more money and more time? Like, where are you really thinking about the key unlocks to enable that vision for the business?
Yeah, we've started to invest in some of the early market exploration for certain data businesses and intelligence businesses, and yes, we're looking for an inflection point. So back to I think sort of our financial mentality internally. We need some market-related inflection point to really invest deeply in the hardware and the go-to-market for those types of outcomes. What does that mean for founders? Like in tactical terms, for me and my team, like go get bookings. Like it is true that you can pre-book and pre-sell things. That is absolutely possible. I'm a big fan of in Colorado, Boom Aerospace. I'm sure we're all familiar with, right? And their team pre-sold, I don't know the actual number, over $1 billion of bookings to United Airlines before that aircraft ever existed. So people want to think that's impossible. It's not. If you have the right value prop and the team and the technology is there, you can sell the future.
And that happens in space and energy. There's hyperscale data centers, pre-buying fusion reactors right now. And when you've got to build something novel and hard tech based, like the money's got to come on the front end. So that's super exciting. And so if there was like one thing that would accelerate your business, like if you could wave a magic wand and have something today that would accelerate your trajectory, first of all, would you even want that, or are you maxed out already? And then what would it be?
The latter part of that is really interesting. Would we even want it? I think we appreciate our position right now in pacing, leading the race and pacing this industry growth. So I don't think we would want it immediately because that may reduce our competitive edge if everyone else had access to that same thing in the market. So, and why I say all that is like, what is the one thing? The one thing I go all the way back to the beginning is like, I feel we're probably still missing the data layer that we need in the stratosphere to have extreme confidence on balloon related flight paths and accuracy of steering these systems. So that would be a big unlock for us, but we're a small market. There's not really anybody else in the world that wants that data except for maybe a couple companies. So that would be a huge unlock.
All right. Well, we're running up on time, right, David? So
yeah, we're up on time. I want to be respectful of your time. We know you've got a hard stop, Andrew. So we're gonna kind of shift into what we call rapid fire mode.
Sure.
Which we're just ask you a series of like maybe completely unrelated to Urban Sky, but rapid fire questions, and love to get your initial reaction. So I'll kick it off. So what do you think is the most overhyped signal in deep tech right now?
Oh, I mean, the easy answer is AI, right? But I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on all these other deep tech fields. I think we're experts on what we do. So I would say just like generically, this company is a huge believer in AI, and we have adopted all the tools all over the entire organization at every layer. But it feels like there's a lot of over-indexing in that space right now.
Next one, what do you think is one of the most misunderstood things about building in the aerospace world?
Probably the time it takes to do this. For a traditional investor, you've got to be patient. And we've had a lot of investors pass on this company because they don't want a 7 to 10 year time horizon to get the type of return. But in this space, you can build enormous moats and defensibility. Back to my previous comment around AI, I think like this is not, aerospace isn't software companies, and you can't use Claude or Cursor to develop a company in 2 months. Like our moats around hardware are fought tooth and nail with blood, sweat, and tears over 7 years. So for someone else to recreate any of this is extremely difficult. But that means the investor community has to be patient for those larger outcomes.
As a local company, local being Colorado, right? What do you think is one of the most underappreciated advantages of building in Colorado? Or what do you think for you guys has been one of the best things about having a Colorado company and building deep tech?
Yeah, there's two specifics for me. One is the regulatory support that we have here. So just very tactically, the FAA has been incredibly kind and accommodating and a partner in our development. That I can't say that would be true in other states, because I know I've run into blockers in other states trying to do some stratospheric experimentation. So we have very good partners here on the federal and the local side related to airspace integration. Two, it's just the talent, right? Aerospace and defense is a big market here in Colorado. So we generally, and just for anyone that's listening, we're hiring, but generally, we try to find the best people from some of the larger aerospace and defense companies that are bored, and we bring them here to build something that matters.
All right, last one. What is one unusual talent you have that no one knows about?
I don't know. That's such an interesting question. You're going to stump me on this one, Ari. I'm like, I don't know. I became a dad a little while ago. It's not a talent, but like I've learned, I think I've learned through that. It's actually made me a better CEO. But I think for my daughter, I felt funnier than maybe I was with her, and just all of her smart laughs and giggles and stuff make me really happy. So I don't know, Ari. I've lived, breathed this company. I don't really have any talents outside this company. I can tell you what I don't do. I'm in Colorado. I don't ski. I don't snowboard. I don't hike. We don't do all these things that maybe more traditional Coloradoans would do. So I'm a pretty boring guy. I got to work on that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't think of yourself as boring, dude. I think you're doing some pretty cool stuff. And,
you're a super committed founder, and obviously, congratulations on the progress that you're making, and the approach you and your co-founder have taken is remarkable, and it's working. So we're super thrilled for you. Thanks for joining us on Massive Signals. Great to catch up with you.
Thanks for tuning in to Massive Signals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and share the episode with someone who cares about the future of deep tech. And subscribe to our Substack at massive.vc to stay in the loop on all of our current investments, thinking, as well as upcoming events like our quarterly Deep Tech Table Dinners and the second annual Deep Tech Summit in May of 2026. Find it all at massive.vc. Until next time, keep listening for the signals that are shaping our future world.